Hello, my name is Vincent Phillip Muñoz. I am the Tocqueville Associate Professor of Political Science and a concurrent professor of law at the University of Notre Dame. And it's my pleasure to be with you and to participate in the Napa Institute October Conference on Principled Entrepreneurship. Let me just begin by thanking Tim and Steffi Bush and all those at the Napa Institute, John Meyer, for asking me to do a lecture again for the Napa Institute. I'm a big fan of the Napa Institute and everything it does and stands for, and proud to be included. I'm sorry we can't be together. I'm in my living room at home, I'm in my bedroom at home. I look forward to next year, hopefully, and we can gather in New York in person. And my prayers for all those who are isolated at home or have contracted the virus or suffering from the virus. I myself just had a negative test this morning. One of my students tested positive for the virus, so I've been in quarantine myself. So my prayers for everyone and for the nation that we recover as a nation and gain good health quickly. Okay, my topic today is what is woke capitalism and why should I care? For those of you who attended my talk last October in New York, much of what I'm going to talk about today is going to sound familiar. But I thought I'd revisit the same thing, and not only is it the topic of our conference today, this year, but woke capitalism has exploded. Last year, it was a term that few of us had actually heard of. Now it has reached our common vernacular. Now, I'm not a businessman. I'm an academic. I don't even teach in Notre Dame's business school, though I'm proud to say I do teach a lot of our business students. I'm a political scientist, and my academic specialty is the political philosophy of the American founding, our founding fathers, and especially what they thought about religious liberty. So I don't normally recommend that business leaders pay attention to academics, especially philosophy types. But we need to pay attention to philosophy to understand woke capitalism. We have to understand the ideology that motivates it. What we're seeing right now is a radical philosophy that's been festering on campus, spreading to the corporate world. Among other things, what this is right now is a battle of ideas, of philosophical ideas about human nature, about the nature of the human person, about human creation. And ideas have consequences. So what I want to do in our time together is to attempt to explain some of the ideas, pernicious ideas, that animate woke capitalism and the terrible consequences that those ideas are causing or will cause for a free society. Okay, what do I mean by woke capitalism? I mean the alliance of big business and identity politics and social justice progressivism. So big business, identity politics, and social justice progressivism. I probably don't need to do this, but there are all sorts of recent examples of woke capitalism. A couple years ago, Nike, the shoe company, decided not to sell the Betsy Ross, a flag-themed apparel, cleats and things like that that had the Betsy Ross flag because Colin Kaepernick denounced it. Budweiser, for many years now, has been sponsoring Gay Pride Week and advertises heavily gay pride events. The whole NBA has gone woke. Black Lives Matter. On the court. A few years ago, they moved their all-star game from Charlotte, North Carolina, because of a North Carolina state bathroom law. So these are just recent examples, and we could go on and on and on. Woke capitalism leads to what's known now as cancel culture. Cancel culture includes, but is not limited to, the termination of employees who express politically incorrect opinions. Some famous examples, Brandon Ike, the founder of Mozilla, who was fired for donating $1,000 in support of a pro-traditional marriage campaign in California. James Damore, the Google engineer who circulated a memo suggesting that men might be better suited for engineering than women. It's simply expressing these opinions. Drew Brees, just a few, it's football season now, Drew Brees, New Orleans Saints quarterback, he was forced to apologize or cowered into apologizing for simply saying, I'm going to quote here, he said, "I will never agree with anybody disrespecting the flag of the United States of America or our country." Perfectly understandable sentiment. We may or may not agree with it, but simply for saying, standing up for the flag, saying, "I won't agree with those who disrespect the flag," he had to apologize. Woke capitalism also manifests itself in ideologically charged human resource departments and diversity and inclusion training. That's where it penetrates really into corporate America. Okay, let me be clear. What concerns me is not that businesses are supporting political causes, causes in general or liberal causes in particular. It's fine. I think businesses can support liberal causes. I like Chick-fil-A. So I don't have a problem with liberal businessmen and women supporting the causes they favor. But woke capitalism is different. It's unleashing a different type of political activism. Woke capitalism involves companies using their prestige and financial clout to push an exclusionary, progressive political agenda of, candidly, of sexual liberation. The agenda is vindictive, it's intolerant, it's hostile to people of religious faith. This is what we have to understand. Moreover, it's animated by an ideology that's hostile to political liberty and a free society, to basic American ideals and principles. Let me try to explain this woke capitalist ideology for what it is, and then I'll say a few words about how I think we ought to try to fight against it. Let me try to explain it this way. Do you remember the Supreme Court case Masterpiece Cake Shop? This was from a few years ago. There's a bakery owner. His name is Jack Phillips. He refused to design a wedding cake for a homosexual couple. The case is usually framed as a dispute between gay rights on the one hand and religious liberty on the other hand. That's not exactly what I want to talk about. I think this case it's not a perfect example, but it can help us understand the ideology of woke capitalism. Okay, here are the basic facts. 2012, a gay couple, Charlie Craig and David Mullins, they wanted Mr. Phillips to custom design a wedding cake that they would use to celebrate their homosexual union. Mr. Phillips owned this bakery called Masterpiece Cake Shop. Mr. Phillips says he was willing to sell them a cake, a non-custom made cake, something off the shelf from his bakery, but he was not willing to design a cake for them. Mr. Phillips considers himself a cake artist. That's why he named his shop Masterpiece Cake Shop. He's also an evangelical Christian. He believes he ought to use his artistic talents in ways that are compatible with his religious faith. Therefore, he refuses to make certain types of cakes, including Halloween cakes, cakes celebrating homosexual marriage. Craig and Mullins were not happy with Mr. Phillips. They felt insulted that he went custom design a cake for them. It's not hard to understand why they would feel insulted. I suppose many of us would have felt the same way in their shoes. They had to go elsewhere to get their cake. At the time, again, this is back in 2012, Colorado did not recognize same-sex marriage. However, Colorado did have an Anti-Discrimination Act, which prohibited discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation in any place of business engaged in the sales to the public of any service. So Craig and Mullins fired an anti-discrimination complaint, which led to the Colorado Civil Rights Commission ordering Phillips to cease and desist from discriminating against same-sex couples. The commission mandated that Phillips provide staff training regarding diversity and inclusion, and mandated that his shop comply with Colorado's gay rights ordinance. It also required him to prepare these compliance reports that would document all the people he denied service to, along with the reason why he denied them service, and also remedial actions he was taking to comply with the law. Okay, Phillips appealed Colorado's civil rights action against him, and he ultimately won at the Supreme Court in 2018. I say this, but he's still harassed today by lawsuits. Last year, someone came in, they targeted him, and they wanted him to bake a transgendered cake, which they knew he would not do. And then another round of lawsuits ensued. It's really just terrible. Okay, I don't want to talk about the case. I want us to use the case to think through something. Here's my question. How did Jack Phillips, the cake shop owner, actually harm Charlie Craig and David Mullins? What did Phillips do to them that prompted their legal action against him? In one sense, in the most literal sense, Jack Phillips did nothing to them or for them. Phillips denied a request to engage in a commercial transaction. The two gentlemen wanted Phillips to design a cake. Phillips said no. People decide not to do business with one another all the time. That's ordinary in business, as you surely know. We could think of any number of reasons why Phillips could refuse to design the cake that would have been perceived to be innocuous. He was going on vacation. He couldn't do the cake by the date requested. He was too busy and wasn't taking new orders. He lacked the artistic skill to do what they did. If he simply denied them for any of these reasons, we would have never heard of these individuals. So the harm wasn't that Phillips refused to design a cake. The harm was the reason he gave for refusing to design the cake. He refused to design the cake because he was against same-sex marriage. It was articulating his reasons, his beliefs, communicating that he found same-sex marriage morally problematic, and then acting according to those beliefs. That's how he did harm. Phillips' violation in this era of woke capitalism was his blasphemy against the ideology of modern progressivism. Phillips violated one of the sacred dogmas of today's secular elite. He expressed his considered judgment that sexual activity between two men is not the moral equivalent as sexual relations between a husband and wife. Like heretics of old, the state of Colorado persecuted Phillips for articulating a hateful opinion, for not being sufficiently woke, we would say today, in matters of sexual orientation. So we have to think through this carefully. Why or how does the expression of a belief, of a moral opinion, and the non-action that follows constitute a harm? Why is it harmful to say, I do not want to do business with you because I do not believe, in this case, in gay marriage? Remember, it was Craig and Mullins who approached Phillips. They asked him to do business. Phillips simply declined, and by all accounts, he was polite when he did so. All Phillips wanted to do was to leave them alone and to be left alone by them. The answer to our question, I believe, reflects the new liberal woke morality that progressives have adopted and the ideology that they're attempting to impose on the nation. James Phillips, the woke folks believe, assaulted the dignity of Craig and Mullins. He assaulted their dignity by refusing to recognize the legitimacy of their marriage, the moral propriety of their sexual lifestyle. He did not recognize their group identity as homosexuals. In the religion of the woke, the self, the group identity that we put forth to the world, especially in terms of our race and our sexual orientation and our gender identity, that is everything. Denying the self that others put forward is to attack them. As the woke put it, it's to dehumanize them. The non-recognition of gay marriage is a violation of woke morality because morality requires that we reaffirm the group identity of others. To be moral means to be recognized and acknowledged, to be accepted and affirmed, to accept and affirm the identity of others, whatever that identity is. The act of recognition itself is a necessary component of moral behavior, the woke teach. If one's group identity is not respected or recognized or affirmed, if one is disrespected, to use an awkward term, then one's humanity, one's equality is denied. let me make clear, this morality of recognition is a one-way street. Those who have been powerful in the past must recognize and affirm the identity of the previously marginalized. But the previously marginalized don't have to recognize the previously powerful. The woke demand for recognition from everyone, but they themselves only recognize the woke. In woke morality, the world is divided into two classes: oppressors and the oppressed. Oppressors include white men and traditional Christians. The oppressed include people of color and non-Christians. Social justice, according to the woke, requires that we subjugate oppressors, white men and Christians, and elevate the oppressed, people of color and the marginalized. There's no neutral understanding of society. There's no idea that we're all equal on account of our individual dignity. There's only oppression and the fight against oppression. So woke morality is hostile to Christianity. It's a revolution against the moral and political principles upon which America was founded. In our older understanding of human beings and human equality, in this older understanding, we're all equal because we're all children of God. Our individual dignity and our individual equality is what animated our constitutional principles. Of course, our constitutional practice was terrible in many respects, especially regarding race. We shouldn't belittle that. It was a failure to recognize the individual dignity of all human beings, especially African Americans. That was our original sin. We failed to recognize every individual's natural rights. But the woke don't believe in natural rights. The older understanding of our political morality included a presumption of liberty, that individuals were free to employ their labor according to their own discretion. This was an essential aspect of what it means to live in a free society: the ability to control one's own labor, one's own property, including one's property and one's beliefs. This, again, is the failure of the founders, the failure to secure this liberty for all individuals. Now, this freedom was not unlimited. We need to recognize that in situations of monopoly or exclusive governmental privilege. Then if one was generally open for business, one had to take all comers. And of course, in our country's history, we had to make an exception for race because of our original sin, slavery, and the continual denial of justice through legally enforced segregation, since it involved denying Black Americans their equal freedom to control their own labor and freely enter contracts with one another. But these were the exceptions to the presumption of liberty. Again, a liberty that followed from our natural God-given equality and our God-given natural rights. The older understanding of political equality, of individual morality, is that if you didn't do anything to harm another, if you didn't do anything to another person, if you just left them alone, you did not harm them. Christianity might demand more of us, but that was a matter of personal responsibility, not state-enforced coercion. Expressing one's opinions alone might offend someone, but in the older understanding, as long as you did not interfere with another's rights to express their own opinions or in some way interfere with their God-given natural rights, speech alone couldn't harm anyone. The new woke understanding is different. Speech and the expression of opinions that fail to recognize group identity, again in terms of race, sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity, failure to recognize these group identities are now called dignitary harms. Thus, speech that offends protected classes can be shut down. This is what we're seeing in campuses, increasingly in society all over the nation. Businesses like Masterpiece Cake Shop that refuse to engage in commerce for reasons associated with certain protected identities, these can be fined or sanctioned and eventually shut down. This new morality, the morality that says group identity, not individual identity is primary. This new morality says society is a never-ending struggle of the oppressed against the oppressors. Incompatible with our traditional Christian and American notions of freedom. This is the point I most want to convey. If my humanity requires your affirmation, that you respect and approve of me as I want to be affirmed and recognized, then my demand for recognition must necessarily control and limit what you can say. It will also direct and control what religious beliefs you are allowed to embrace, what professions you're allowed to enter, whether you're allowed to participate in the market economy. In the woke morality, there's no right of freedom of speech for the non-woke. There's no right of religious freedom. There's no right of freedom of association. There are no property rights that must be respected or are not subject to overriding political and moral demands of overcoming oppression. Limited government, individual freedom, the America of the Declaration of Independence, of the Gettysburg Address, of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. This cannot survive woke ideology. So this is what's at stake with woke capitalism. The new progressive woke morality seeks to eradicate traditional religious orthodoxy. We must be absolutely clear about this. Traditional Jewish, Christian, and Muslim beliefs about sexual morality and gender will not be tolerated by the woke. The woke believe that traditional morality is itself immoral. This is why Hillary Clinton said in 2015 that, quote, religious beliefs have to be changed. This is why Beto O'Rourke, if you still remember him, and before long, pretty much every liberal political, ambitious liberal politician will favor stripping tax exemptions from churches and religious schools. There's no live and let live with the woke. It's not the excess of the new morality or its most fervent members who are intolerant. Intolerance of traditional religious belief is woke morality. The expression of intolerance of traditional morality is itself a sign of moral superiority. It's the quintessential way that one shows that one is woke. Woke capitalism is dangerous because it spreads this new morality to every aspect of our lives. If the woke get their way, you will not be able to own a business or work in a profession or operate a college if you are not sufficiently woke. Woke orthodoxy is already and will increasingly be enforced through powerful bureaucracies. In corporate America, through human resource departments. In higher education, my industry, increasingly through offices of residential life and offices of diversity and inclusion. These bureaucracies are thoroughly ideological, and their ideology is hostile to traditional morality. Okay, let me kind of come to a close here. And it's not a happy conclusion. I don't have an easy solution for the challenge of woke capitalism. I don't think we can simply rely on market forces because it's not clear that the market is on the side of traditional morality, let alone liberty itself. I expect that woke capitalism has exploded because corporate America believes it's good for the bottom line. I don't know that they're right. I hope that they are not. But many believe being woke is good for business. The NBA for sure believes that. Nor do I think things will simply get better with time. They will probably get worse. I might be pessimistic right now because I'm recording this the day after the first presidential debate, and it was just a debacle. Woke morality dominates elite higher education. If you send your children to any university that ranks in the top 50 institutions in the US News and World Report, this is the morality that they are taught and that is relentlessly promulgated. I'm happy to say that Notre Dame, where I teach, I think is a little bit better, but there are woke forces present at Notre Dame as well. So I don't have any easy solutions. I think what's needed, at least in part, is that we understand what this woke morality is and that we relearn our moral and political tradition. We need to return to our political life, to our founding principles of natural rights, natural law, limited government, individual freedom. We need to reorient our politics towards a firmer and sounder moral basis. And then as individuals, as business leaders, we must use our political and economic freedom well. those who operate businesses and create opportunities must do so in a morally principled way. We must see our lives, including our professional lives, as the means to do the work that God intended us to do. America is home to diverse people who disagree about the deepest things. Only if we relearn and reacquire a true tolerance, a true respect for differences of opinion, and a real charity to those with whom we disagree, will Americans be able to live together civilly, to live and let live as one people. I think only if we relearn to recognize one another as equal children of a loving and just God, who have dignity because of our God-given nature. Only when we recognize that and stop being obsessed with recognizing people according to their race or sexual orientation or gender ideology. Only then, I believe, can we again become one people. Only then will religious believers be safe and secure in America. That's going to require that we resist woke capitalism, and also that we live our personal lives and professional lives as faithful servants of God. I'm sorry to end on such a dismal note. I very much wish we could gather together. I apologize if this lecture has not been as clear, and one of the reasons I like Q&A is to clarify things I may have said badly or in a confused manner. But hopefully we can be together again soon. Good health and God bless to everyone.